Cinnamon, what are you doing? Shh, I'm doing my ACT practice test. Hey guys, it's Mary and welcome back to Study Journey. I'm here with the ACT tips video where I'm going to be showing you how I prepared for the ACT. If you haven't already, you can watch my ACT scores reactions video. I'll link it down below. And I got a 31 on my ACT and this was my first time taking it. I took it this past summer. It was my freshman year and I'm going to be showing you how I did that. So the first time I took a practice test, I actually got like a 22 or something, so I basically improved by almost 10 points. So this video is separated into 5 sections. First, I'm going to be talking about what is the ACT and how it's helpful and why you take it. And then it's going to be like how to prepare and book recommendations and stuff. And then it's going to be tips on how to prepare, and then tips for the day before testing, and then tips for day of testing. And I'll answer your questions. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. Oh, and if you see me looking off, that's because I'm like reading off these pages that I wrote. So what is the ACT? The ACT is a standardized test used for college admission, and its purpose is to measure the high school students' readiness for college. It's just to provide data to compare the applicants of that year. It's not used as a requirement anymore as of 2022 right now. And it is definitely not used to ensure getting into a school, but it is used as a decision of eligibility. There are 4 sections in this order: English, math, reading, and science. And there's also an optional writing test that you can take, but I think you have to pay like an extra $15, I'm pretty sure. Some colleges require, but others don't, so make sure you look at the college that you want to apply to. For the ACT, you can take it up to 12 times, but it does not mean you should. Study shows that a student is less likely to improve after you take it more than like 2 or 3 times. I will recommend taking it 2 to 4 times, definitely no more than 5, because you want an opportunity to improve, but you don't want to overtake it. So what are the benefits of getting a good score on the ACT? The ACT is scored from a scale of 1 to 36, 36 being the highest. If you get a 30 plus on the ACT, that's really good and makes you eligible for like a lot of colleges. And it also makes you eligible for the Merit Aid Scholarship. A lot of people ask me whether the ACT or the SAT is better, and neither of them is better than the other technically, but the ACT gives you less time. It tests just a variety of knowledges, but not like on a deep level. And for the SAT, there are harder questions, but you get a lot longer time. So if you're not used to like going in a fast pace or reading really fast and skimming all that stuff, maybe try the SAT. Southern states usually do the ACT more, and the northern states do the SAT more. I don't know why, but that's how it is. I've taken SAT practices just for the sake of this video, and I think like if you do SAT, there's definitely you need to study the SAT vocabulary. For the ACT, I think my tips and the books I will recommend will really help, because like that's all I use to prepare for the ACT, and Okay, now for the details of each section. I'm going to start off with English. So the English ACT test is 45 minutes, 75 questions, all multiple choice. And the English section questions, they test on like grammar, like understanding of passage, main idea, vocabulary, punctuation, usage, sentence structure, information, etc. So there are 5 passages, and the underlined portions, or like the numbered bracketed, they will indicate what the question is referring to. And the ACT English book, this is like my favorite textbook. I know that sounds nerdy, but you don't know how much it helped me. English used to be my worst section, like the English section, because of all the grammar and stuff, but this book, like, so it is The Complete Guide to ACT English by Erica Meltzer. I don't know if I said her name wrong, but sorry. So for me, how I did this is I read through the book once and did all the practice problems on it. That book is really good about explaining and giving you problems to practice. There is like, I think 2 full-length practice tests in the very back of the book. The book provided me all the knowledge and understanding I needed to know for the ACT English. And after I read the book once, I reread it again, and then this time I didn't do all the practice problems. I just looked over what I missed the first time and I took notes. So like I summarized it and then like put down my key points. And here is the packet of notes I took on all of like the ACT stuff. It's not that bad. But for the English section, like here, I would do like verb tenses and then noun plural, conjunctions. And basically like I will go through and like just write down the key points of each one and things to remember for the English ACT section, like the ones I usually get wrong. And then I put a vocabulary section like on the previous test that I took, maybe the ones I got wrong or like I didn't understand. Next is the math section. The math section is an hour or 60 minutes and it's 60 questions. So basically 1 minute per question. But you shouldn't do it like that. So like pre-algebra accounts for 20 to 25% of the test. In elementary algebra is 15 to 20%. Intermediate algebra is 15 to 20%. Coordinate geometry is 15 to 20%. Plane geometry is 20 to 25%. And trigonometry is 5 to 10%. You can use a calculator, but make sure it is permitted. So go on the ACT website and see if your calculator is allowed, but it's not required. Like you can do all of the ACT problems on there without a calculator at all. I barely used it. There's no reference sheet, so just know the basic math formulas. And later I will talk about a list of that you have to use on basically every single ACT test. The book is The Ultimate Guide to Math ACT by Richard Korn. I did not read this book. Personally, I didn't need it, but I heard it helps a lot. And if you want extra tips, I will make another video on that. So the best way to prepare for math ACT is just to do practice. Like practice. I know everyone says that, but it is the best way. Also, make sure you have enough time to check over your answers. Like on the test, there's a lot of questions that are asking for you to solve this equation or something. Just try to plug in your numbers and do it backwards to check if you have time at the end. And also make sure your answer makes sense. Like if it's asking money, it's definitely not going to be negative, but this is all multiple choice. So you can do the process of elimination to help you answer. So a good way to study the ACT formulas is using the ACT formula sheet, and I will link that link down below, so go check it out. There's only 2 pages of it and it's pretty easy, so just make sure you know the basic knowledge of it, like quadratic formula and formula for a linear function, statistics and probability, know how to find the solutions of a quadratic equation, triangles, know the angles and the relationships, so like know the basic stuff of trigonometry, like sine, cosine, tangent, and know how to like write an equation for a circle and just parabolas, sequences, all that good stuff. Yeah, I'm looking at it right now and I will definitely link this link down below. Okay, next is the reading section, which is 35 minutes, 40 questions. So there are 4 passages, 10 questions each, and they're all multiple choice like the rest of the ACT test. The order of these 4 passages is prose fiction, social studies, humanities, and natural sciences. Some people say to like do a practice test and see which one you're good at and then like flip to that one and do that first. But personally, I just do it in order. I don't know. I just like don't like flipping around. But if that helps you, make sure to do that. If you're trying to finish all of the problems on the test, then it doesn't really matter which order you go in maybe. If you know you aren't going to be able to finish in time and you're not shooting for that perfect score, then that might be really helpful. Skipping to the passages you know you do best at. The book, which is really helpful on showing me how to read faster and skim, is The Complete Guide to ACT English by, again, Erica Meltzer. Thanks for saving my life. What I struggle with most is definitely the timing. Like, I could never finish reading the passage and doing the questions in the time limit. It was just not enough time for me. Unless you read like super fast, I suggest you skim. Me, I cannot read that fast, so skimming was definitely a #1 priority. How to skim, the book shows a lot of ways to skim for different priorities. Maybe if you want to get a 36, or maybe you're fine with scoring a 30, or maybe 20. Skimming is just really scanning the passage to grasp the main concept. This is just to help you get a gist of what the passage is about, and so when you go to answer the questions, you definitely have to go look back into the passage, but you know where each section is. So if it's asking for this, you know where to find it in the text. My favorite way to skim is by reading the first and last paragraph and then reading the first sentence of each paragraph in between. That I think is the most efficient way because the rest of the paragraph is just extra information and details. The first sentence and maybe the last sentence is the most important. This is usually for like the science. The story ones, like the prose fiction or the humanities ones, sometimes paragraphs are really short and you kind of just have to like scan the whole passage and just read most of it. But make sure you understand what is like telling you. The strategy for an ACT reading is definitely different than the SAT one. The SAT, you're supposed to like read all of the passage before to understand and fully grasp all of it. But for the ACT, all the answers to the questions, they are like all in the text. They don't expect you to know anything beforehand. So all you have to do is go back in the text and find it. If you know where your information is, then it's easier to go back. Like, oh, they're talking about puppies here, let's go back to where they said about puppies. And the answers, it might not be like word for word, a lot of it is, and if it isn't word for word, it's usually just like synonyms and all that stuff, so look out for that. And I didn't take much notes for the ACT reading section, but like I just wrote down kind of like how I skim and mapping out the passage, what that means. The big picture, like the main idea questions are the ones I struggled most, so I really focused on that. And after you do this, there is a website. There is a website called Crack ACT. I'll link it down below too. And that website just has like practice problems, and it gives like, there are a lot of sections. You can do them individually. It's like only 8 minutes for each one, and you can just go through each every morning or every afternoon, whenever you have time, you can just go through them and like just do some problems. And obviously here is the remember section, what I need to remember when I take the test. Finally, the science section. It is 35 minutes and 40 questions. Data representation is like 30 to 40%, like where it gives you graphs, and research summary is 45 to 55%, which is basically asking you like, what is this research doing and what is the outcome of it, or something like that. And then conflicting viewpoints, 15 to 20% of the test. There really isn't a specific book for this section. I couldn't find one. If you do, comment it down below so others can see. But I'll just use like Ultimate Guide to ACT or something, like that whole book with all of the sections. There isn't really any techniques for the section. It is mostly on just like practice. But I do have some tips. I think there are like 6 to 7 passages in the science section. There are sections that will have graphs and data and representation and experiments and stuff. And there's one section that is like completely different from the other ones. It has like 2 or 3 different viewpoints from like different scientists or students, and they're doing an experiment. It's paragraphs, and then you will have to answer questions on like their similarities and differences. So like a question would be like, or which scientists will agree with this statement? I suggest you save this for last because it is really time consuming, and if you get like overwhelmed and don't have enough time to do all the easy questions, that's like not worth it. So for this section, the conflicting viewpoints, try writing out like short notes or maybe drawing yourself a small diagram on the side to like represent what is stated in the passage. So like if scientist 1 agrees with this statement, and you can be like, oh, scientist 1 agrees, and then just write agrees beside scientist 1. And then when you go answer the questions, you know the difference. So the sections with the graphs and stuff, there will be like a few short paragraphs to describe the experiment. I didn't read that first. Like I decided to skip it and wait until if there is a question asking about something maybe in that paragraph, and then I would read it. I just went straight to the diagrams, examine each graph for a few seconds, know what the axis is telling you and what it is pointing to. Questions may be as simple as asking like, what is this piece of data on this graph, and you just go to the graph and simply just find it. It takes practice sometimes to just get it inside the time zone, but I think that's just the hardest part. All the information is already in the graphs. Since there wasn't really a book, I basically didn't take any notes. But I did give myself like a few tips, which is like when doing questions, if you're not sure, go to the passage and read it again. And also make sure to read and annotate the questions. So like accidentally miss a question because you thought it was A but it was talking about B. Underline keywords. If it's talking about experiment A, you know you're not going to go look at experiment B unless it says so, and stuff like that. You don't want to make like simple silly mistakes that will bring your points down. And finally, in general, the ACT is just like testing you on your ability to answer questions and comprehend data in a short amount of time. If you don't have that much time before the ACT, try to at least take one practice test so you know like the structure and your timing. But if you do have a lot of time, make sure to like do a practice test maybe like once a month or maybe even once a week, depending on how much time you have left. And I would do it this Saturday morning from like 8 o'clock, and so you would do that whole test, and then you would be done for that day, and then on Sunday you would come back and check your answers, see what you missed, take notes, study, etc. And then throughout the week you can just use Crack ACT and do several problems, or first you would like do one practice test and see what your weakest area is, then read that book, and then go back and do another ACT test on just that section. and then read the other books, or maybe you don't need to, but if you do, read the other books, and then finally you can just study after you've read all the books. If you're shooting for like a 30+ or maybe a full score, you want to try to get all the problems done. Really focus on timing, but if you aren't, it is way better to slow down your pace and improve your accuracy. The ACT, it doesn't like count off if you get a question wrong, so make sure to guess on every single question so you have at least a chance of getting it right. Now, how to prepare for the ACT. If you haven't already, go register for a test and book your location, ideally 1 to 2 months beforehand so you get a spot near you. Also, having 1 to 2 months to study is ideal because you have enough time to study and you probably won't get worn out or procrastinate. Motivation tips. So to not get demotivated, I suggest you just put studying into like your daily routine, like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth every day, study every day. Depending on how much time you have and how much time you have left before the test, you can adjust the time to your fitting, but 15 minutes a day, 30 minutes a day, an hour a day, just put some time into it every single day. Also, make sure you review what you missed because learning from your mistakes is how we improve. Another great thing to do is keeping a log on your mistakes. Write down the context of the question and what you put as your answer and the correct answer and why you made that mistake so you don't make it in the future. Whether it's like a simple mistake of solving error or like you didn't read the question correct, it's a concept that you need to work on. You can definitely focus on that more. I will try to find a few hours of each week to like just study on individual sections, perfect or try to perfect one section, not to like when it's perfect, but like to get better at it to a certain point where you're satisfied and then move on to the next section. So like read the book, do practice test on one section and then move to the next section and then the next section, and then finally you have all those sections perfected by themselves and then you put them all together and you have a good test. In the beginning when you're first studying, you don't have to worry about timing. In the beginning, don't worry about the timing, just understand the passage and the questions, and then after you read the book, you should be comfortable with the text structure and then you can start working on timing. First, practice on accuracy and strategy and then do timing. But if you have like very little time before you take the test, just try to get one practice test in so you know like how to take the test. And if it's like really close, like you don't have time to do a full length test, then just at least go in and read the instructions of each section so you don't have to waste time during the test and you know the timing and stuff. Okay, so tips for the day before test day. So if it is a day prior to the big test day, it is really unlikely that you will improve in Big Mouth from just one day of studying. In fact, I suggest you don't study. I know you're probably not going to listen to me when I say that, and I don't blame you, but it is very important. Don't study the day before. Because if you've already done your best and studied prior to that, you're gonna have the knowledge. The worst that can happen is you get worn out that day before, and on test day, you just don't have the mental energy to push through. If you haven't studied at all before, it's kind of like too late in a way, but you can read through the instructions so you know what it's asking you and watch a few short YouTube videos, I guess. I don't know. What I'm saying is don't procrastinate. But what you can do if you want to study, you can review the notes that you've taken. Go ahead and review it and go ahead and review your summary, and then you can go through your log of missed questions. And also, just for like physical conditions, don't eat, drink, or do anything that you wouldn't do. Don't take any medicine that you wouldn't do just to help you sleep, because sleeping medicines will make you drowsy, and if you're afraid you can't go to bed that night, try something else. Working out or just moving your body. Exercising will tire your body out, and by nighttime you're probably gonna fall asleep. Also, the day before, you pack all your stuff that you're gonna take. There's only a few things, but you wanna do it the night before and make sure you have all this stuff so you can go into testing. First, you gotta bring a license. I didn't have a driver's license, so I just used my passport, which is completely fine. And also, make sure to print out your testing ticket or they won't let you in. If you don't have those two things, they're not gonna let you in. A number 2 pencil, multiple number 2 pencils, so let them all be sharpened and just put them on your table. A watch or a clock that doesn't make a noise. Don't bring any electronic watches. That can get you kicked out. Approved calculator on the ACT website, they'll tell you whether or not it's approved. Layered clothing, so like a jacket or something. Try to wear clothes in layers so you aren't too hot or too cold while testing. Water, some snack. There's gonna be, I think, a 10 to 15 minute break in between the math and reading section. My nail broke. Okay. Now, last section is tips for test day. It is test day. Woo! Okay. So number 1, eat a good breakfast. Fuel, mental energy. You know, you need your energy. So eat a good breakfast in the morning. Testing and just using a lot of your brain power like makes you hungry real fast. You don't want to be the one whose stomach is growling in the middle of testing, and it's not gonna have a good impact on your test either because you're gonna be too hungry to focus. Make sure to get to the testing on time, which is at least 5 to 10 minutes before. Like they say, if you are on time, you're late. You need to get there early so you have time to like find your seat, find your spot, get ready, prepare mentally, breathing exercises, I don't know, but get there before. Stay calm and breathe. There is nothing you can do now. It's test day. You don't have to be nervous. Like, there is nothing to be nervous about. And when you take your test, don't try to go faster or slower than you normally would. I got a little nervous, and for my first test, which is the English section, I went a little slower than I normally would. So I barely finished in time, but I did, thankfully. And as you take the test, it should get easier if you've taken full-length practice tests before on a Saturday in the morning. That is like the same conditions as it is on test day. You will get into the groove and it gets easier. And the next thing I'm going to say is really important, that there is an extra section here. There is a 5th section, and I didn't know this, but like they were like, okay, section number 5, and I was like, what? This is just like a random section. Each test is different. Some people have English, some people have math, some people have reading, and some people have science. I was really hoping for a math or English one, but no, I got science, like one of my worst ones. But anyway, I pushed through and I finished that test. It is, I think, like 25 minutes. The number of questions for each test is different depending on which section you got. Most of you can retake it again, so you don't have to be stressed out. This is not your last time. Okay, finally, I'm gonna answer some questions that I got for the ACT. So I'm just gonna answer them here. So scoring, what scores you want to aim for and stuff. Like I said, the full score is a 36. You want to aim for a 30 plus. That is really good. And for some schools, there's like the 30 plus ACT club where like they put your blown up poster on the wall. And also, if you get a 30 plus, you, like I said, get accepted to a lot of colleges. For Ivy League schools, it might be more competitive, like 34, 35. That's pretty high. It's like if you miss one question, sometimes it's a 35, sometimes it may be still 36. To get a perfect score is really hard, but to get higher than like a 20 or 25 is easier. They only count the overall best score, right? Some schools do, some schools don't. Taking the best score out of each of your tests and putting them together, that is called a super score. For example, if like this time on the English test, I got a 35, and that's really good. Like that's the highest I've ever gotten. The next time I took it, I got a 34 on the English, then they will take my 35. And then same for math and English and reading and science. They will put all of that together and then find your composite score from all of that, and that will be your super score. Some schools take that, but I think Ivy League schools don't. I'm not sure. How long should I spend on each question? That is a good question. So for math, even though you get 1 minute for each question, the beginning questions are easy, so you should go faster than 1 minute on that. You have longer time for the harder questions. For the reading section, it's 40 questions, 4 passages, 35 minutes. You get about 8 3/4 of a minute for each passage, but you might be better at one passage than the other, and you might take longer in one passage than the other. I suggest you take like 1 to 2 minutes on skimming each passage, and then when you answer the questions, you have to go back and look. So don't try to like read the whole passage or memorize everything, because you are going to have to look back. How to know what method I should use to solve. So like which method should you use to solve a math problem? Like I said, I will link down below the formulas guide, and usually you just have to look at the question. If there is a right triangle, think of Pythagorean theorem. If you see an irregular triangle, you can just think of the law of cosines. Or you would use the law of cosines if you know all 3 lengths of the triangle and you're trying to find an angle, you would use law of cosines. If they give you the side lengths, then you can probably use the rule of sine. Trigonometry questions, well, for trigonometry, I think basically know how to find a sine, cosine, tangent, And know the formula: sine squared plus cosine squared equals 1. Sine of x is equal to cosine of 90 minus x, the opposite for cosine. And if you find more advanced questions that you might not know on the practice test, they might not be on the ACT, or unless you're really unlucky and get like a super hard math section, they shouldn't test you on really hard knowledge. It usually only goes to about algebra 2 and maybe a few questions past that level. Okay guys, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope this helped. If you have any other questions or suggestions for my next video, make sure to leave a comment in the comment section below, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.